Okay, hey there, folks. Even though convention signings and other live events are back on track, I figured I would keep bringing book tour to you. So, welcome to Russ's Rockin' Rollercoaster, intriguing interviews with creative minds. Now, fresh off my 3-day appearance last weekend at Scares That Care Horror Convention in Williamsburg, Virginia, tonight's guest is definitely front of mind. You know, we all have our struggles, and some, well, are a bit more challenging. And when things turn around, more hopeful than others. So please welcome tonight's guest, the award-winning horror, suspense, and thriller author Daemon Manx. Daemon is a recovering addict who spent nearly a decade in the prison system before re-emerging as a horror author. Welcome, Daemon.
Russ, thank you so much for having me. And hello, everybody.
All right, just a heads up to the folks at home. Feel free to send me any notes or questions you have for Daemon in the chat box during the show, and we'll get to a few at the end. All right, Daemon, my man, as we always do, we'll start at the beginning. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
It's an interesting story. So I'll make this really quick. So, you know what? On January 15th of 1967, Bob and Lois sat down to watch the very first, what would be the very first Super Bowl. A very pregnant Lois turns to Bob during the coin toss and says, "It's time." And Bob's like, "What do you mean it's time?" She's like, "The baby's coming." And Bob says, "Well, can you hold it till halftime?" My mother patiently held me in until halftime, where Bob then drove her to the hospital, dropped her off, came back home, watched the rest of the game, and I was born sometime the next morning, which was January 16th in the beautiful sunny state of New Jersey in Pompton Plains.
Pompton Plains. All right, and I am a born and raised New Yorker, transplanted to New Jersey as well. And it turns out Damon and I are not that physically far apart right now, but who knew? All right, so you were born in New Jersey. So talk to me about Jersey back then. What's interesting is, as a New Yorker, at that time, New Jersey was always the scuttlebutt. Oh, New Jersey's just the ugly stepchild compared to New York. New Jersey was always second class, and you had Springsteen, we had Billy Joel, and we were New York, you were New Jersey. So let me ask you, what was the feeling on the reverse? Was there sort of like that little brother syndrome going on there? Was like a chip on your shoulder? What was it like as a kid, like being in the shadow of New York?
You know what? I definitely, growing up in New Jersey, I was enamored with everything New York. And I did everything I could to get into New York,
There you
even
go.
like being much too young to go. I remember being
Same
about
here.
14 or 15, taking the bus in,
Yeah.
walking around Madison Square Garden, copping tickets to see David Bowie, George Thorogood. Like I would go in, and then I'd go into the Hayden Planetarium to see Laser Floyd or Laser Zeppelin. So I was always trying to get into Manhattan, because hey, that's the Big Apple. That's where it's all happening. But and everybody in New Jersey grew up with that. This town sucks, man. Nothing happens in this town. And now I live in the town that I grew up in,
That's
and
right.
and I love this town. It's so crazy. So,
For
but I
sure.
still love New York. I'm just a little now. I'm a little more. I'm cautiously afraid of New York,
Hmm.
and probably a little more caution back then would have been wise. But I
Yeah.
had none.
Yeah, me and my buddies, I mean, sorry, mom, but me and my buddies used to sneak in from Long Island when we were like 12 years old. We would take the Long Island Railroad into New York. We were like trying to buy fireworks and God knows what else we were doing. And I was in the tunnel the club when I was like 16 years old. Like, what was I doing there? Like, really not unwise decisions. But in any case, that's youth for you. So talk to me about when you were a kid. So what was the setup? Do you have brothers, sisters, or was it just you?
I have a younger sister, just 2 years younger than me.
Mhm.
And we're kind of, it's suburbia. It's a nice area. I have woods around the house. I have a little pond. I have animals, deer and all that kind of stuff. But a couple blocks away is the highway, so it's the mix of everything, and that you do get in the suburbs. Um, Close knit family for a while at least. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole dynamic, getting together, family parties, too much alcohol involved. you know,
So,
some adult supervising you with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth and an open can of beer,
sounds right.
throwing the lawn darts like inches from our heads. So, we had all the great things that a Generation X child should have at the
Sounds mirror to my life.
time.
So what was the situation? What did your folks do?
So my father actually worked for a company, DuPont. So
Mhm.
DuPont in Pompton Lakes near us was in charge of the explosives division in DuPont. And they were actually part of the company that built a lot of the Manhattan Project, which actually worked on a
Really?
lot of the components for the first A-bomb.
Whoa.
Yeah. And my father was one of the supervisors at DuPont in like a blasting cap division. And they also made a lot of the government products that went over to Vietnam as well. So my father did that.
Well,
And
whoa, 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 hang on.
oh, okay.
Whoa, 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 whoa. We're not skipping past this part.
All right.
Oh, slow down, cowboy. So hold on a second. So your dad was involved with the Manhattan Project. Now,
He wasn't per se, like he
right.
came around after that, but he was with the
Oh,
company that was
oh,
with
oh, I see.
Manhattan.
So
Yeah.
okay. So
That was after he's not that old. No.
so let me ask you that. But even then, though, was it? So this is going back obviously quite a ways. What was he? Was that known, or was that sort of classified information, or was it public knowledge? Like, how did that work?
I just found out about this like a couple years ago. Like
Really?
he just like he's getting a little older now, and
Right.
he's telling stories all the time, and like this just came out at like eat at Thanksgiving or Easter, and I'm like, what? You never told me this, and yeah,
Wow.
sure enough, I knew they did blasting caps and they were making landmines that they were using in various wars. I know Vietnam specifically, some horrible stuff I had heard about that.
Wow.
And yeah, and then he spilled the beans saying, it wasn't like they didn't give any, like nobody made the whole thing. Like
Right.
this person made this company made that. So part of the
Right.
components that went into it.
So let me ask you, I mean, only if you know, was it a
Yeah.
situation where when you're saying no one was making the whole thing, did did your dad or your dad's team, did they know what they were making a part? Did they know actually what it was for? Or they were just told, make this piece? It doesn't, you don't need to know what it's for.
Yeah, I don't know if they did know. He didn't
Mm,
tell me, but I'm kind of thinking that I don't know if anybody knew what it was going to be until it was there,
right,
until it was used and
right. Jesus.
until it was used.
Wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
so you were saying, what about your mom?
So my mom, she wrote for a local paper, she's a writer also, and she was also in the medical field as a medical secretary for a pathologist. So she was like very up on the technical terms of
Okay.
different tissue and different testing
Right.
and
Okay. So we
proficient.
so you're with your sister. So you're so I have two sisters myself. They're 4
Mhm.
years younger than me. And so we were never really in the same school. So I kind of had I was always a school ahead of them, but your sister being 2 years younger, were you guys close? Were you not? Was it just a typical, brother, sister, sibling nonsense going on?
Yeah, we were close. We're closer now, I think, but we were always close because it's only 2 years apart. So we were
Right.
always, summer vacations, going here, going there. I always saw my sister at school. I think we were like even in the same home ec class at one point in high school. So
See.
we were always there together. And then I got out. She went to college afterwards. So
Right. So
yeah.
so when you were a kid, what were you into? Were you a reader, a writer, into sports, music? What was your thing?
Geez. I was a nerd like early on. So um I was always into horror movies, honestly, really into movies and into sci-fi and into Star Trek. And then like I got to high school and I was awkward and I found girls and I became a guitar player and that worked out really well for me. I also got into things I shouldn't have gotten into, getting high and partying and drinking and But, I ended up going out with a girl. I was a freshman and I ended up going out with a junior, and she was an amazing guitar player. And she like turned me on to all this classic rock music like
Mm,
that I had never heard before.
yeah.
So I got really into progressive rock. I got really into deep cuts from the 60s and stuff. And I got really into Pink Floyd,
Mm,
like deeply, heavily into Pink Floyd.
yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Hey, you're talking my kind of talk.
All right. All
All right.
right.
So, all right. So you were into Star Trek, and you're a few years older than me, but we basically grew up around the same time. So you like sci-fi, you like horror movies. So when you were watching, were you at that time, was it just that you were liked horror movies, or did you read horror then?
You know, when I was a kid, I did read a lot. And I remember early on reading Something Wicked This Way Comes by
Mm,
Ray Bradbury.
Bradbury.
And that book impacted me so profoundly because I've always been obsessed with Halloween, like crazily obsessed with Halloween since I was very young. And I've always wanted to write something that encompasses the feeling of Halloween from a young man's perspective. And Ray Bradbury did that with Something Wicked This Way Comes. So, I was reading him, and younger, I was reading the Hardy Boys. But as soon as I got my hands on a Stephen King book, like that was it. I just was like, okay, now I know where I belong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's back, and at that time, that's when, Stephen King was really, his early days, he was really, he started off really as a true horror author before he branched out, right? I mean,
Very much.
Carrie and Salem's Lot and, you know, all that Cujo and all that crazy stuff. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So you were a nerdy guy who found rock and roll and girls, and then, well, you've been open and vocal. And for those who are watching, we're going to watch it later. The reason that we're having this conversation tonight is, so this is the first time Damon and I are actually ever talking face to face, but I've been following his story for the last couple of years. And for those who've seen the show and those who don't, you know, one of the big reasons I like to do this show is I like to talk about people. I want to understand them. I kind of want to, you know, I want to get into the human condition. That's just what interests me, because I think that people's stories are more interesting than their careers. Well, their careers are great, and we're going to get into that. But Damon's situation is it was always interesting to me because, I'm sure, like Damon's going to tell us, and like so many others, I know many, sadly, I know many people who fell into various forms of addiction, and it didn't work out so well. I have a friend to this day. He's an old friend, and sadly, he's been caught up in it since he's 15, and I'm almost 53. And there's this great guy who's trapped beneath this other stuff, and I don't know that he's ever going to get, I hope he does, but he hasn't. And I've seen, just like a lot of you, people who are not with us anymore, or whose lives took a bad turn. And your life could have taken a real bad turn. Talk to me about, your path is real interesting. And I want to say something here and now. I give you so much credit for your willingness, and for those who haven't been part of this experience, it's not so easy to talk about your worst moments, your pain, your struggles, and to do it with a sense of openness. It's not so easy. How many of us really like to do that, or are willing to do that? And you have been. So I commend you. It's brave, and it's honest, and it's helpful because other people can connect and feel, maybe they get something out of it. So you found yourself battling with some substance abuse. Why don't you talk to me a little bit about, like, what kind of kicked that part of your life off, and what, if you have any insight, what kind of led you down that path at the start? Because there's always our bad turn starts. There's usually minor bad decisions in our head that start before the big bad decision gets made. So can you talk to me a little bit about what was going on with you, and what was the dominoes that started to topple that led you to the path that you took?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for your very kind words. So yeah, no, it does not happen overnight. Nobody falls into hopeless addiction and finds himself facing 10 years in prison overnight, although it can seem that way. Um, and we touched base on it, in the beginning. I felt out of place. I was a nerdy kid who didn't feel comfortable in his own skin. And I didn't really find myself or come into my own being until like I started smoking weed and hanging out with older kids, and listening to music and having that sense of ease and comfort from partying actually feel like it was giving me the missing ingredients to life. And that right there is the crux of Damon's problem right there. So I didn't have a drug problem. I had a Damon problem. I was insecure with me. I wasn't comfortable living life on life's terms, and I didn't know how to cope effectively with my own insecurities. And it's probably more deeper than just my own insecurities. It's everything that goes with that, interacting and functioning in society.
So let me so
I was uncomfortable.
Yeah, so I believe me, we're going to really go into this. I have a question. So, on the surface, it's a story that it's a story as old as time. You kind of feel a little displaced, and there's a sense of a community, a found family, and I'm using that kind of loosely. Here are some people who I feel like I belong, and whether that's true or not, at the time, did you have self-awareness that was it a sense of, hey, I'm here, I belong, these people take me in? Or was there some part of you saying, even if I feel this, one part of me feels this way, did another part of you have a sense or know that I don't know if I really should be doing this?
At times, maybe not so much always in the beginning, but there's always those moments of trepidation and self-awareness that spring up. And maybe not so much when it was just like, hey, I'm a 17-year-old drinking a couple beers and smoking weed. No, but as it got a little serious and maybe I'm doing cocaine or I'm tripping 3 days out of the week on LSD, then every now and then, hey, a moment of clarity will arise.
But
Certainly much later.
Is that what happened? It was cannabis, alcohol, cocaine, hallucinogenics. Was that kind of the progression, or was that sort of the cornucopia of what was going on?
Yeah, high school was a mix of all of that. And that, even high school, although like I got kicked out of high school, got allowed back in, nearly didn't graduate, just skin of the teeth graduated. It still wasn't like, oh my God, I was always, I'm like, oh, one day they're going to legalize this. And my father would be like, you're out of your mind. And I was just waving my freak flag. I was, 17 or 18-year-old guy does not really think about what 55-year-old guy will be doing at the time.
Right. So what was it, or what happened that turned that corner where you ended up in a life altering scenario? What happened?
It took decades of progression. So I continued to smoke pot, do whatever, drink, and I was functioning with that. I got married, I bought a house, sold that house, made a lot of money, bought another house, had very good things happen in my life. Got on the game show Wheel of Fortune, had some really great windfalls. And then one day, after my second home, we moved to Florida, still carrying around, these insecurities that we've still not dealt with in about 3 decades now.
Right.
And I'm working as a handyman in Florida, and I'm carrying some 3/4 inch plywood up some very rickety attic stairs. And I pulled my shoulder out and did some nerve damage there. And I ended up going to an orthopedist who prescribed me opiates for it.
Uh,
And that kicked off an even great, like, that was the catalyst. Like, oh my God. It was like a light got turned on. Like the first time that I took that, it was very quickly like, well, I mean, I was rationalizing the use of them. Like, well, as long as I don't do them while I'm at work, I'll be fine. And I'm like, well, I can do them while I'm at work, but just as long as I follow the prescription. And
so
then it's like,
you were bargaining.
yeah, I was bargaining fast, and my bottom was dropping faster than my self-respect. So this whole time I'm rationing and rationalizing with myself, and it's escalating. And then I ran into a friend. Well, I ran into an associate who offered me something a little bit stronger, which was the Oxycontin, which was going around in Florida at the time.
Right.
And then it was all over. Then it was all over.
So what happened? So you got hooked on Oxy.
Yeah. So I got hooked on Oxy. I became a different person. Yeah. I was lying. I was maxing out my credit cards. I was lying to my wife about, where my money was going. Everything I was working for, I was spending on Oxy. I was going to doctors who would write fake prescriptions for me, give
Right.
me fake MRIs,
Right.
and give me hundreds of pills a month.
Did you see Dope Sick? Did you watch that?
So I know Beth Macy, who wrote the book.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, I'm friends with her agent,
Okay.
Peter McGuigan, who I'm trying to sell a book to Peter, but
Yeah.
I'm not quite Beth
Right.
Macy
So
material at the moment.
to the degree that you know it, I mean, it seemed very real to me. Would you say that that's a very clear and realistic depiction of what it is?
Completely accurate. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what landed you? So you're in a bad way, you really, the bottom's falling out. You're just going down the rabbit hole to nowhere. How did you end up in prison?
Yeah. So I ended up losing my business down in Florida. I ended up getting divorced. We ended up selling the house, and I came back to New Jersey with my tail tucked between my legs. I had to move into my parents' basement at 45 years old. And now I can't find OxyContin in New Jersey, but I'm still the same guy. I still have the same addiction. And what is available in New Jersey, or was probably still is, was heroin. And it was a very easy lateral move to just go that way. It was cheaper, it was stronger, and it took me down, like an anchor fast. And at the point where I was unable to fund my addiction, was unable to beg, borrow, or cheat any money from anyone who would lend it to me, I had this rational thought that I'm like, oh, well, I could just go to that convenience store, a drive-through convenience store, and, hold up my hand and pretend that there was a gun in it, and they'll just give me the money from the register. And that's insanely as that sounds, in the grips of that addiction, in the grips of being dope sick, it seemed like I knew it was wrong, but it seemed like, okay, yeah, well, this is the rational way, because at that point, like I wanted the addiction to end me. Like I was just done. I wanted it to be over. I wanted it to kill me, and I couldn't take out myself. I was just pathetically hopeless at that point. So I went and I robbed a convenience store, and the police came and questioned me, and within about 20 minutes of like, oh, I don't know, I told them everything. I'm like, I confessed to everything. I gave them the case. I'm like, here you go. Here's a
Wow.
first
I mean,
first degree conviction.
that was a real cry for help. This is just like, just take me somewhere, take me away.
And when I did, it was like this weight was lifted off me. I was just like, oh my God, maybe it's over now. You know, I had no idea. It was far from over.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you wind up. So what happens? You got convicted for what?
So if whether you have a gun or you just say I have a gun,
Right.
it's
Same thing. It's the same.
it's an intent to do bodily harm. So
Mm.
that's a first degree armed robbery. So that's a no early release act, and they were throwing out 25 years,
Jesus.
20 years, and I stayed in the county jail trying to get that number down to something like I felt like I could possibly get around, you know. Meanwhile, I'm coming off the drugs in the first 6 months. I'm insane, you know, just not even thinking. The numbers don't even seem real to me. Nothing seems real to me. And
So
yeah, go ahead.
let me ask you, I had a few interactions with law enforcement in my younger days, including an unpleasant night in legitimately a really unpleasant jail. But that was one night. What does it do to you physically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually to be incarcerated for as long as you were?
Well, the United States correctional system is meant to oppress you. It's meant to. It's not supposed to be pleasant at all. But you know, it physically did it. I know people who have spoken to me and said that when I got out, I walked with my shoulders hunched, like I was, you know, nervous of what was behind me.
Right.
Compressed. You know, I was compressed. My body felt compressed, even though, you know, we were getting exercise or working on things that were positive. I was compressed. I had serious digestive issues from that,
Right.
because you get like 10 minutes to eat your meal, and then you're rushed back into your cell by
Right.
somebody slamming the doors back and forth, screaming over a loudspeaker.
A lot of
So
stress, anxiety.
there's a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, but I got involved in very spiritual and very positive things to counterbalance that while I was there.
For example,
So
for example.
I joined a Buddhist group, where we would meet and meditate once a week. There was actually an R&B band that I joined, so I got to actually play guitar every now and then when they would call it out. I went to every spiritual event there was. I went to mass on Sunday nights.
Wow.
Um,
Just 1 second, because I want to hear more about this. I just want to back
yeah,
up a minute.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you go you're in prison, and when you're first there, I mean, you are going through, I'm assuming, serious fucking withdrawal.
Yeah, so that's happening in the county jail.
Right.
So I go into the county jail and I'm sick. I'm very sick. And I didn't get a good night's sleep. In fact, I don't think I slept 30 days plus, where I was like an hour. Maybe I got an hour.
Right.
And the substances are slowly dissipating from my body. And yeah, you're sick, you're shivering, your muscle cramps, the whole thing. And it takes a while for the physical to right itself, but it takes much longer for the mental.
Yeah.
They always say when you don't make any decisions within the first year
Right.
of being sober, and that's because you're still crazy.
Right.
And I think even longer than that. Like
Probably.
I was still crazy for a long time. And I remember like 6 months in the county jail, like I actually started feeling things again. Like I actually started missing people
Mm.
and realizing, like, God, what have I done? You know, and I
Right.
remember crying a couple of times. That's when the tears start. You know, there's this something we say is the best thing about getting sober is you get your feelings back, and the worst thing about getting sober is you
They
get your
get your feelings
feelings
back.
back. Yeah.
Right. Because I guess your emotions, your your touch with humanity gets so just smothered by the substances that they lose their they lose their sort of their integrity, and they need time to sort of rebuild the synapses and make those connections again, right? Once the muck is cleared away, now you got to rework those muscles that have been lying dormant for so long, right?
Exactly right.
So when you're
Yeah.
so you're in jail, I mean prison, and you're connecting with various groups who are on more of a spiritual path. So let me ask you, most of us, and this is a good thing, but most of us know very little about life behind bars. Okay. How much of what we see in movies and TV and reading books, how much of it is real and how much of it is just, invented for dramatic purposes based on what
But
your own experiences?
I'm going to say, depending on what part of the country and which prison you are in, that's going to vary. Because if you end up out on the West Coast in some of those prisons, it's exactly like what you're seeing on TV. Where I ended up in a prison in Newark, New Jersey, predominantly a blood and Crip prison. So, you had your black gangs in there with a lot of Latin kings and very, very few white or Asian people in there. And that was probably, a really good thing. Because I found the guys in the gangs, the Bloods and the Crips and the Latin Kings, to be very supportive, and especially, I came in and I'm like, I'm just going to be me. I'm going to be an honest dude. When I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be true to my word, and I'm not going to change anything. And people respect it. And I was put in with a lot of older dudes, a lot of older gangsters. There were a lot of older Italian people. And the first day I get in, so I'm walking to the cell with my khakis and a pillow and some sheets, and the door opens and there's this huge dude laying on the bottom bunk, gold teeth, legs are spread out. I'm like, oh fuck, what the hell is gonna happen?
Right.
And I go to step in the cell. He's like, yo, my man, before you come in here, what are you in here for? And I'm like, armed robbery. He's like, that's a real respectable crime, my friend. Come on in. And he wanted to make sure like I wasn't a child molester,
Right.
sexual abuser, because they've got a code in prison. And
Right.
when he found out that I had a respectable crime like
Wow.
robbery, he welcomed me in. The
Wow.
next day, so that guy became one of my best friends. His name's Porter, and high-ranking Latin king. And he says, look, dude, something's going down with the Kings. There's a chance the cops might run in our cell tomorrow, pull us out, ask a bunch of questions. He's like, you don't know nothing. I'm like, I don't know nothing. What do you mean? What the hell is going on?
Right.
So sure enough, like 4:30 in the morning, these giant cops open the door, crash through, get on your face, lay down, hands behind your back, like start ripping the cell apart,
Right.
drag us out and bring us down to the main building.
Right.
And strip us, separate us, face against the cinder block walls. And he's like, what do you know about the Kings? Tell me everything your bunkie told you. I'm like, what the fuck is this? I don't know anything about the King. And even if I did know, I'm not
telling you.
I'm not that fucking stupid. And I kept my mouth shut and I just hugged the wall. And they're like, hey, you just got here. We could make things really easy for you if you tell us something. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure you're going to make things easy.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So that was that. They let us go back to our cell, and me and Pork missed our breakfast. So we go to a table and we're going to eat breakfast. And Pork's superior is sitting at the table, and an older Italian guy who had been around Newark since the 60s. So where he is from. And they go, how did it go? And they're looking at me. And Pork goes, let me tell you something. He goes, my bunkie, he kept his mouth shut. He hugged the wall. You can trust this guy with anything. He's all right. And from that moment on, my prison life was smooth sailing.
Wow. And how long were you all in? How long were you in?
In total, I did 8 years between county jail, halfway house, prison.
Right.
So,
Okay. Wow. So just a quick interlude for folks who came in a little late. If you have any questions or comments for Damon, put them in the chat box and we'll get to a few at the end. All right. So let's shift over our world of words here. So
yeah,
you had some struggles. You ended up in a strange place, but maybe in a strange way, it did you a favor in the sense that it got a chance to sort of clean you out, give you a fresh perspective. How did those times, those intense struggles end up shaping what and how you write?
it impacted it in every way. Prison is where I wrote my very first short story. I started taking college classes in there. So I'm taking my English comp and my English lit, and I'm like, hey, I really love it. I love reading Orwell. I love reading these things that we have to write essays for, and I'm like finding myself pretty good at it. And I start watching everything that's going on in the prison, and I'm reflecting on my life. And I'm like, well, let me start writing short stories. So I started writing short stories, and some of them were pretty bad. And then one day they weren't. I had a lot of time, and I
Right.
had a lot of composition notebooks. So I started writing, and one day I wrote this story about a very turn of the screw kind of thing about two children living in a very old house, and a lot goes on, and it ended up being quite good. I took it out to because I had two friends who were also in college with me, and I'd always read something to them. And I read the first paragraph of that book, and my friend Mike goes, you know, I think that's the best thing you've read yet. I'm like, I think I got something here. That one ended up getting published.
Nice. So let me ask you
Yeah.
something. Do you find, did you or do you or both find that the writing process is, especially given the path that your life took, do you find it as a form of therapy and catharsis?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It was especially in the beginning, it was the healing, it was the escape, to get those things out. And as I'm writing more and more of my life experiences are falling into the page.
Yeah.
Until, I mean, like, all right, so this is happening to that character. But yeah, that happened to me when I was 10.
Yep. Oh no,
Yeah.
I know. Actually, the older I get, I was, my first part of my writing career, I would write about some stuff, but that happened to me, but it was always the goofy stuff. But now it's if you're really gonna say something, you gotta really say it and you gotta let that stuff out. So let me ask you this. So to the degree that I understand this, you had a few other adventures in life. You were connected to a major incident involving a former president.
It was. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I had a really nice job at one point. And in the early 90s, I was a stagehand roadie in New York City, working for a company called SIR. We deliver pianos, guitars to Saturday Night Live, the Letterman Show, Madison Square Garden. So I'm going all over the city. And one day, we had just picked up a piano, and I'm driving down this very tight street, and it's East Side, and these cars in front of us stop, and they're double parked, and like there's no room, and they're big black cars, and all of a sudden this guy gets out, and he holds up his hand, and he's like, "Stop!" And I look, and he's got like the little squirrely earpiece, and I'm like, "That's a Secret Service guy," and sure enough, more Secret Service guys get out, and I realize these are black limousines. Seconds later, out of the middle limousine, Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan get up, walk out. Guy next to me goes, "That's fucking Ron and Nancy." I'm like, "Oh my God, it is." So I beat the horn. I wave to him.
Right.
Mr. President waves to me. Nancy Reagan waves to me. And
Right.
they go off and go into the hotel. And at this point, I'm shell shocked. but the Secret Service guy he's done now. And he looks at me and he goes, "All right, move that truck." And I look, I'm like, there's no room for my truck to fit between double parked limousines and the
Right.
parked cars on the other side of the street. But he doesn't want to hear it. He's like, "Move that truck now." And I put my foot on the gas and I start going forward, and I make it past the first limousine. And so I have a little more confidence. And then
Wow.
it starts, I hear this screeching sound. It's like it's metal against metal, and it's like soul crushing, and it's
Mhm.
and that's the sound as my front bumper catches on Ronald Reagan's quarter panel of his limousine. But I'm unable to take my foot off the gas at this point. And I'm
No.
now I'm committed. All right.
Oh no,
So
you're grinding up against the
I'm
president's limbo.
I'm grinding the entire side of Ronald Reagan's limousine, take the mirror off, and I'm unable to stop because it's like, what do I do? If I stop, I'm stuck here. So
Oh,
I emerge on the other side of the collision and stop the truck, and the Secret Service guys swarm the freaking truck. They take Jake, who was with me, bring him to one side of the street. They take me, bring me to the other side of the street. And then he goes, "All right, what's your social security number?" And I'm like,
no.
I tell him, I'm like, "You want my license?" He's like, "Nope." Like, "You want the insurance?" He's like, "Nope, just your social security number." So
Oh God.
I, like, you know what, like when I turn 65, do I pay off the limousine? I don't know what happens.
Oh God. They got a file on you now.
I'm sure they do.
Oh
Yeah, I'm
no.
sure
Oh
they
no.
do.
So hang on, just real quick. So when you were a stagehand, so you're working for, doing stuff for Letterman, Saturday Night Live, like, did you ever cross paths with any of the guests? Did you have a chance to like see any of the folks who came on the show or?
All the time.
Oh
All the
yeah, who'd
time.
you say?
Yeah.
Who'd you say?
I've met so many people. I've hung out with Billy Squire. I met Paul Schaefer in his bathrobe. I met Joe Jackson in his bathrobe. I met Lindsey Buckingham in his bathrobe. I I went
Okay.
I always had to deliver things to people's houses. So, I would show up and Paul Schaefer would be smoking a joint in his bathrobe. Here's the best story though. Okay.
Okay.
So Keith Richards, when he records an album, he does it from midnight to 6 or 7 in the morning.
Okay.
And he was with Steve Jordan recording for his Expensive Winos album. And I was tasked with going in early at 7 to go pick up the equipment. So I'm heading over there and I'm like, all right, they'll be gone. So I get to the studio and I walk in, and Keith Richards and Steve Jordan are sitting on the freaking couch right in front of me as I'm packing up the amps. Keith is drinking a bottle of Wild Turkey. It's down to the last gulp. He takes the last gulp and goes to pitch it in the trash can. And the guy, Charlie, I'm with, goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, Keith, can I get that?" Keith gives him the bottle of Wild Turkey. He goes, "Can you sign
And
it?"
then
I can't even speak. I mean, that's Keith freaking Richards,
Richard. Oh my God.
And so he gets a signed bottle of Wild Turkey. I get the memory. But
There you go. He's got the you got the memory. He got the bottle. All right.
yeah,
All right. That was great. But now it's a time for a special segment on the show where we spin the wheel on the wheel of 7 possible categories, including a few I brought out for tonight's show. Wherever it lands is what you get. And the categories are known unknowns, the reanimator, music lover, apocalypse, stranger to strange land, true crime kink, and the Wizard of Oz. All right. You ready? Wherever it lands is what you get. Here we go. All right, no whammies. Let's see what we got for you, baby. All right, and for you, we got Apocalypse. Oh, I like this one. All right, all right. Well, it finally happened. The zombie apocalypse is in full effect. Emphasis on apocalypse. Because in this version, the zombies have one weakness. If you kiss one square on the lips, tongue optional, you will forever be inoculated. To save your own skin, would you kiss a full-blown zombie on the lips? And we're not talking a quick peck, but a fully immersed makeout session.
am I risking being bitten as well? I imagine I am. I think I could catch one when they're like, I think I could. I mean, I'm going to be immune for the rest of my life. Yeah, I'm absolutely going to go for it. I mean, I'd be a fool not to.
All right, you're going for the zombie makeout. All right, there you
Yeah,
go.
I got it.
All right, so now we're gonna pick your poison. I got three choices for you. I'm not gonna tell you what's behind each. You got A, B, or C. Pick one.
I'm going to go with C.
C. All right. We're going to put you in the writer's room. Okay. So, for anyone who is writing fiction wherein the prison experience is part of the narrative, from your point of view, what elements do you think are critical they get right, and what pitfalls do you recommend they avoid?
Oh yeah. So you're definitely going to get away. Stay clear from the what is it's so cliche. The guy walks into prison and he punches the big guy right the first time. That doesn't happen. And if it does, like you're out of there. You're getting shipped out. Don't make a guy a tough guy. Tough guys don't last in prison. Um, Yeah, that whole cliche. What you do need to get right is you got to get right how freaking boring prison is. How much time you're sitting around doing nothing, staring at four walls in the cell. How much you're like thinking about, well, gee, the clever ways like how you would break out of this place if the apocalypse happens. Like
That's it.
you think of every scenario of how you're getting out of that cell. That's the reality of prison. And like if they made a movie about what my prison experience was, it would be the most boring movie you ever saw in your life. Yeah.
Okay. You didn't Shawshank your way out of there.
Absolutely no, no,
No, right,
no.
right. All right, fair enough. Okay, so now we're going to give you some truth serum. I'm going to ask you 10 questions. You ready?
Yes.
All right, favorite flavor ice cream.
Mint chocolate chip.
Ooh, good one. What's one food you will never eat ever for any reason?
Oh, geez. Oh man, you stumped me here. And I'm not going to eat an artichoke.
Artichoke, fair enough. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Okay. Bucket list destination anywhere in the world.
Ooh. Jeez. Um, Italy.
All right. Scariest movie you ever saw?
At the time, it was Night of the Living Dead.
Ooh, okay. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Infinite sarcasm.
Okay, that's the first on this show. Okay. Okay, so you mentioned before you play guitar. If you could play any other musical instrument, what would you play?
Ah, yeah. I probably really love to play the piano.
Yeah. Okay. Cats or dogs?
I love. I can't discern. I love them both
Yeah,
so much.
I got one of each upstairs.
Yeah.
All right. So normally I would ask this question, but I know you don't drink. So what's your favorite unwind beverage?
Coffee for anything, winding or unwinding.
There you go. All right.
Yeah.
You can see a live performance, sports, music, theater, whatever, any seat, any venue, any time in history. What's your choice?
Pink Floyd, Madison Square Garden, the Animal Store.
Ooh. I have to say, I came this close. I never saw Floyd. I came this close once. I never got to see him. All right. If you could get a continuation of any canceled TV show ever, what would it be?
Breaking Bad.
Oh God, that was so good. So good.
So
All right. So we got some room for some questions. I don't see anything in the chat box. So we're going to hit a couple that I didn't get a chance to ask you at the front end of the show. Hang on one second. Let me scroll back up and see where we got. Okay. So, when you went into prison, obviously you were in a certain headspace, not a great one. And you were physically, it affected you in every way. How do you now with time and hindsight, how do you view the person that went in and how do you view the person that came out?
mm, Well, I'm the person who went in is such an alien stranger to me, and I've done everything in my power to make sure that I never become that person again. So, I see the person that went in as a detestable human being who was untrustworthy, and you know, I mean, that person was making excuses for why he was doing what he was doing, and that really disgusts me at this point. Um, Although, I understand addiction and I understand what it does to people, but I still, I find that behavior in myself unacceptable. The person who came out, person who walked out, I'm proud as hell of that person, and
I
like
know.
I tell people every day, I'm living my best life. Like I really am. I'm living my best life. I appreciate every day. I go out there, I feed crack corn to squirrels and ducks and birds every morning. I walk the dog. I get to walk the dog. Like this is my gift.
Mhm.
I'm gifted this second life. Not many people get to appreciate life from the second chance point of view, and I get that. And like, yeah, I'm writing the stories I always wanted to be. I'm being the person. I think I'm attaining the potential that was always meant for me to reach for.
Well, I give you just like I said earlier, but now even I know more about your situation. Honest, I mean, like I said, I know a lot of people, and I'm sure if you do, we all do, people who they didn't make it. I
Yeah.
mean, either they're still trapped in it to one degree or another, or they actually didn't make it. I give you just immense amount of respect, and I'm proud of what you've been able to do for yourself. It's not easy to do, but you did the hard work. And the thing is that most people, unfortunately, are either unable or unwilling to do the work. They want to skip ahead, they want to skip over the bad parts to get to the good stuff, but you got to go through, and you did. So
Thank you.
bless you, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Let me ask you that just one last thing. So you are not, in retrospect, you're saying, you really didn't care for that earlier version of yourself. Are you able at this stage to look back on that earlier version of yourself and look upon that version of who you were with a sense of, even though you didn't like that person, or maybe you detested that version, are you able to look at that version of yourself with kindness, with a sense of gentleness, and saying, rather than saying, ugh, that old me, he sucked balls and he was this and that. Are you able to say, you know what? Underneath, there was always a good person under there, and I can recognize the mistakes, and I know it was a rough go, but you made it? Or do you just say, nah, fuck that guy?
No, I mean, because the nice guy was there. The nice guy was always there.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy I started out this world as, is the guy I'm ending up as, compassionate for others, love nature and loves animals, will do anything for you. That's who I was. That's who I am. And, it's a lesson to me that, yeah, we all make mistakes. Some of us make much larger mistakes than others, but, I do wish that, as we said before, I wish that at some point in time I was able to listen to those voices in my head, take pause, and really like work to get my life on track
Right.
prior to having made that fatal fall. But I was unable, and all of our experiences, the good, the bad, are what culminate and make us who we are. So had I not gone through that pressure cooker
And
of pain and desperation, I probably wouldn't appreciate life as much as I do today. So, I owe everything to that guy too.
I appreciate that. One last question. So when you lived behind bars, you were there for a long time. Was there a point when you were there, even though you may have had many years to go, where you thought, you know what, I think I'm going to be okay? Or was it just, I don't know what my life, is it just, or is it still filled with so much fear and trepidation of what your life might look like once you get out?
every day was filled with that feeling, also the feeling of like, I'm never going to make it. So it was that roller coaster every day, that like, oh, I can do this. And then, 10 minutes later, like, I'm never going to, I'm never going to make it through this. Yeah. So
And you did. And you did. And I'll tell you, for one, I am grateful that you did. All right. So
thank you so much.
all right, folks, I'm going to share my screen. I got some stuff to share. So we've been talking about a whole bunch of stuff. Talk to me. What am I looking at right here? Talk to me about
Yeah. All
what
right.
What do we got?
This is a book called Scream in the Dark. It's book one of the Oceanox series, 4-book series. That all 4 books are coming out this summer. Bang, 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 July through October. This is a book that was written in the halfway house in 6 months. 520,000 words written in 6 months.
Whoa.
Like that. We were just put under COVID quarantine. It was really crazy conditions. I had this little word processor and I would write from 6 to 11 every night. And this book came out in a fever because, as I said, I always wanted to write that story that encapsulated Halloween, that had that feeling of old school horror, that took in so many of my life experiences. That's this series. The Oceanox takes place in 1979. It starts off at a child, Troy Fisher's 10-year-old 4th grader, having a Halloween party at his house where he's built a haunted house in the garage called Scream in the Dark, which is something I did back in 1979. Built the haunted house in my garage.
Awesome.
But from there, the little town of Garrett Grove, trouble just starts. The kids in Garrett Grove start getting sick, and some of them start to die. And this disease spreads quickly, and we find out that it's really much, much more. And it's an evil that's far darker and far older than anyone is able to realize. Within the 4 books, it's a roller coaster ride. It's very much, if I had to say, oh, encapsulate this in what is this book? This book is The Thing meets The Stand.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, and those are what I love. That's the book I always wanted to write. It takes place the week before Halloween in a 7-day time period where all hell breaks loose in just 7 days. Like the art team is just ripping through the pages like just a page turner, they're saying, and I'm getting great reviews.
Great.
Some of them are out there today. It's so kind of you all to show up. I appreciate you guys and all your help.
So you said, book 1, you said it's July, you said?
Yeah, book 1 comes out July 16th. Book 2 comes out in August. Book 3 comes out in September. And book 4 comes out October 1st, just in time for you to digest this whole series before Halloween.
That's it. All right, you hear that, folks? It sounds you just said the 2 magic words. You said The Stand and The Thing. Hooked. Okay, in. Awesome. Make sure,
Perfect.
folks, get your copies when they come out. Order yours. Awesome stuff. All right. As for me, so keeping in the theme of dark and creepy and crime and mean things happening. So I'll call your attention to Murder in Montague Falls. This is a series of 3 noir novellas that all take place in the same fictional town of Montague Falls, written by myself and my 2 writing partners, Sawney Hatton and Patrick Thomas. So the protagonists in this book are all teenagers, but it's not YA. All right, I can promise you that. They all went to the same high school, but the tales are set in 3 different decades. And the first one, which I wrote, which takes place called Red Ink, takes place in the 1980s during the Reagan era Russian Red Scare, when there was fears of Russian spies being planted in the U.S., loosely based on something that did actually happen to me. One night, a paperboy is collecting on his route. No one seems to be home. He puts his face up against the window to see if anyone's home. He can't really see because it's dark. He thinks, but he's not certain, that he sees his elderly customer get murdered. He freaks out because he's only 14, doesn't know what to do. He hems and haws, and after a while, he decides, I'm going to investigate this crime myself. And I can tell you that things get rather dangerous. And the second story was written by Sawney Hatton, which takes place in the 1990s. It's set during the Satanic Panic and based off the West Memphis Three, where this teen girl, Natalie, is obsessed with the dark arts and pentagrams and devil worship. And these two best friends, who are not the sharpest tools in the shed, they're both vying for her attentions. She uses that to manipulate them. She sucks them into her world, and I promise you, things get rather grisly. And then in the third story, written by Patrick Thomas, it's actually set in the 1950s. Classic noir, sultry high school teacher seduces one of her students in the hopes that he will murder her husband. And those three tales all take place within Montague Falls. All right. Montague Falls is available on Amazon in ebook and print and is published by Crazy 8 Press. All right, folks, that's our show. I want to thank big thanks to my guest, Daemon Manx, for sharing talking about his life and his career. And I want to thank everyone who's watching at home and for those who are going to watch on replay. And if you want to see me and Daemon live, we will both be at the New Jersey HorrorCon in Edison, New Jersey this weekend, April 19th through 21st. And as always, to everyone out there, be gentle, be kind, be generous of spirit, and for God's sakes, go read a book. And I'll see you all on the roller coaster next week. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon. Bye now. All right.